Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Jenna Harner on today, and I want to talk with Jenna about the Steelers' moves and leadership. Now that George Pickens is out, what does this say about Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan's plans to forge a new nucleus moving forward? We'll talk about that in multiple layers, as well as get you ready for Steelers Rookie Camp, which opens today, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire Stick TV in 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. We'll have more on that later. As I said before, we're joined by the amazing Jenna Harner. She's back on the show. Jenna, good to have you back.
Wow, the amazing! I am honored to be here once again. But that was a heck of an introduction there.
We try our best here. Now, Jenna, this has been a week, not just for the Steelers, but for everything. Mike Sullivan is no longer coaching the Penguins. Derek Shelton is no longer coaching the Pirates. There's a new pope. And by the way, George Pickens got traded away from the Steelers. I might have missed something else. And I am begging God, do not let Aaron Rodgers sign after I record this show today. You could do it tomorrow, just not today. I don't want to do another episode. Please and thank you. That's all I ask.
Nope. Please, just wait. Make it like a Friday at 5:00 news dump. That's exactly what we need. Friday, 5 p.m. Aaron Rodgers. Hey, I'm coming, but just not today. Not today.
But Jenna, I want to talk to you about, first of all, I want to get your initial reaction before we dive into the leadership conversation. The George Pickens trade is big news. So they heard with me, with Josh Taylor, we broke it down. I also gave my initial reaction in the morning when it happened. But I want to get your thoughts. What was your reaction to the Steelers making this move, whether it was a good move, a bad move, the right trade compensation, all that?
I think they got the value, first off, the highest value that they were going to get with George Pickens, because I know a lot of people were saying, well, couldn't you have got him for a second? Clearly that value was not there, because it's reported that Jerry Jones said, all right, he wanted him for a fourth and was like, we're going to bump it up a little bit. We'll do a third. But to me, I think this is the right move. And look, I think it was a perfect time for both sides to say, look, we're going to move forward here. I think that this showed that there was not going to be a future with Pickens here, which I think was kind of the writing was on the wall for that. Obviously, there was a lot of trade talk. Pickens earlier on Thursday with when he did some phone interviews with the Cowboys reporters, he said that he didn't ask to be traded. It wasn't a request on his end. So to me, this was just kind of like, look, the Steelers were looking to move on. He was looking to find a new home. I think Dallas is a perfect fit for him. I think it's a really solid landing spot for him. But I also just you didn't get the sense that it was going to work out long term, and what was going to stop Pickens from holding out and not coming to training camp, for not going to OTAs and potentially not playing the beginning of the season. I don't entirely think that was likely going to be the case, but there could have been a chance for him. He's like, hey, look, it's a contract year for me. I want to get my money. People know I'm talented, and so I just think both sides were ready to move on. And I think this is like a nice turning the page, fresh start for both sides, in my opinion.
I think so too. Is a chance for that. The Steelers move on, and listen, we've talked about the impact of things. He was late for Christmas Day game. He's not been the best teammates. He's been the person who people have criticized. He hasn't been there, practiced the hardest. And so in that, I think a big part of what the Steelers are doing here is the addition by subtraction model. And that's something that Josh and I talked about yesterday. But I think with that subtraction needs to be the addition of leadership needs to form. There needs to be, because part of, again, and what I talked about with him, and I also talked about on Brian Batko in the North Shore Drive podcast for today as well. So go check that out. But part of what happened before was when you had your Antonio Browns, your Santonio Holmeses, your Martavis Bryants, there was leadership to corral it. there were guys that across the board, even like Lamar Woodley on the defense in the late 2000s. He came in and he thought he was a hot shot, and you saw guys like James Frazier and Casey Hampton check him constantly. And whenever he would do something, they're like, "You got to do something else. You haven't done enough." And like that led to him being the guy that made the game-winning play to sack Kurt Warner and get the fumble, and they won the Super Bowl 43 that year. It helped him understand what they, to stay focused. And they've had that leadership on both sides of the ball before. But lately, it's been just the defense. Cam Hayward is that. TJ Watt is that. Minka Fitzpatrick is that. But they've been trying to find that guy on offense. They just haven't got it. Kenny Pickett didn't turn into that. Najee Harris didn't turn into that. George Pickens was never turning into that. And Pat Freiermuth may be one of the guys there. But to me, this is a big thing. Like, I think they got DK Metcalf because they're going to expect him to be a person like that. And the question, I think, is who forms that new nucleus?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, also, too, a big reason why Pickens didn't succeed here the way a lot of people envisioned him to, is because there was that lack of veteran leadership. But I think having a veteran leader that is kind of would have shown him the way. That I think you look at, I mean, I don't want to speculate entirely, but you look at the way CeeDee Lamb might in Dallas, I think that's going to help him tremendously. I think that's going to help him take a step forward. Is he going to grow up in some of the ways that we never saw him grow up, and just some of the immature stuff we saw from him throughout his time in Pittsburgh? I don't entirely know if that's going to be the case, but I realistically think that was a big part of why Pickens felt like he could do a lot of what he did. I mean, you kind of just go back and through conversations that we had heard throughout the years, even just, when Najee Harris when the season ended in Buffalo 2 years ago. And he said, there needs to be rules that are changed. There needs to be new team rules. You never want to assume anything, but hearing conversations that we've heard and kind of whispers here and there, you have to think some of those comments were directed towards George Pickens in those moments. Back to your other point about all the leadership too. Yeah, DK Metcalf, absolutely. I think it's going to be a massive thing. I think no doubt the Steelers bringing in Aaron Rodgers, they're going to look to him as a veteran guy. And I know there's so much outside noise about who he is outside of a locker room, but I know there's so much conversation about guys inside the locker room really do like Rodgers, really do respect him. They really do, listen to what he has to say. Because at the end of the day, he's a Super Bowl champ, and he's a potential, or a future Hall of Famer. And a guy who has a lot of experience and all of that under his belt. So automatically he comes in with that respect. But I also think Pat Freiermuth, we've seen him take those steps forward because he's kind of been thrust into that role. He's a younger guy on this team, but yet he's not in that way, in that veteran sense that he carries. And yeah, he's 5 years in now, so he's kind of on that line. But you're going to need guys like that. Calvin Austin, too, I think might be a big part of this, too, just with how we've seen him step up in his on-the-field performance. I think there's going to be a lot of leadership aspects that he's going to be looked at. And I do wonder, too, if they're eventually setting the stage for Kaleb Johnson to potentially kind of step into those types of roles. I don't think it'll necessarily happen this year, but he seems like that good foundational guy. And also, too, I mean, I feel like I keep listening to people, but Zach Frazier, just in he's going to be that lead by example. He's a man of few words. We've learned that, but he is going to be one of those, hey, this is how you do it. I'm showing you, I'm being that example. So I think there is going to be this nucleus that's created on the offense, but because there's been so much instability over the last couple of years, we just haven't seen it until now there's a chance for it to be created.
I want to touch more on that because to me, there's a structure to how you build that crew of leadership because you need vocal and non-vocal leaders. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller. Subscribers sign in with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and with EA Play included, you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. I stream so many different shows that it's great to have them all in one place. I don't have a game as much these days, but it's great to still have those gaming options along with your streaming services available all in one place. Extremely convenient. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Q 3rd Gen. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. Jenna, let's talk about structured leadership because, like we said, there's a chance for different levels of this kind of leadership. There have been your vocal leaders, the guys that are the rah-rah. I think Cam Hayward is very much that. But then you also have your lead by example guys. And like if you think of offensive players in the past, I think of Hines Ward, who often would do his job. He would give occasional things here and there, but he wasn't always the loudest person out there. You think Heath Miller, an ultimate by example guy, never spoke, but was always there doing what he was supposed to and setting the tone for everyone else to see. That's how we need to operate. But then you have guys like Jerome Bettis, who were definitely vocal leaders, who everyone wanted to fight for. And I think those are the guys they need to see in this offense. And I think that's where you got to question yourself. Where does Pat Freiermuth fit into this? Where does DK Metcalf fit into this? But like you brought up with Zach Frazier is definitely one of those quieter types that's going to be a lead by example guys. I really think they are going to need Troy Fautanu and or Broderick Jones to be some of those vocal guys, because if the offensive line is going to be a huge part of what makes this team so much better, they also need to be some of the leaders as far as setting the tone and the culture for this new offensive nucleus we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think I go back to some moments last year where you saw sparks of that in Broderick, and you saw moments, I mean, unfortunately, back to George Pickens, but moments where he's holding Pickens back, and that's just one of those steps that he's going to take to say, hey, look, he needs to be better on the field, of course, as we've talked about a lot on this show, but also in that leadership aspect, he's going to be looked to kind of be one of those, hey, you don't mess with us. You don't mess with my guys, whether he's defending his teammates or whether he's holding somebody back in certain situations. Also, too, Darnell Washington, I think, might be a little bit of an under-the-radar candidate in that way. Just, I know that he's been a little up and down, too, in what we've seen from him, and some injuries have hampered him in that way, too. But I just remember when was it the Eagles game where Calvin Austin's getting in a fight and all of a sudden he just comes, or was it Broderick that came into? I want to say it was Darnell in that moment.
I think it was both of them. I remember Darnell definitely gripped up Darius Slay and drove him to the end zone. I remember that one.
Yep. So I think he could potentially be looked at to take a step forward in that role too. But you're right. No, you're going to have this. It has to be kind of that nice balance. And back to Freiermuth, I do wonder your perspective on where he is going to fit, because I think he's kind of that perfect split of both, where he has no problem saying what's on his mind and, hey, we have to fix X, Y, and Z here, but also showing on the field, look, no, this is how we're going to do it. I think maybe I'd put him more in the vocal category, but I think he kind of toes that line and kind of can be a player that does both.
I think that he is in that both category, but more because of his temperament. When you look at Pat Freiermuth, you know Pat Freiermuth is a fun guy. He loves goofing off. Like in practice, one of the things I think that's coolest about Pat Freiermuth is that he's the guy that'll yell about a touchdown. He'll make a joke. He'll try to be funny. He'll try to liven up the atmosphere. And you need those types of guys. Now, the thing is, you also need those guys that are like the enforcers that are the energy guys. Like for example, we've seen Minkah Fitzpatrick be the guy that like shuts things down. Like when Minkah Fitzpatrick beat the dog snot out of Chase Claypool some years ago. Like that. Like you need guys that will set people straight and set a tone. I don't think Pat Freiermuth is one of those guys, but it's that mix of positive energy. How do you bring it to a team? How do I, if I'm Mike Tomlin, if I'm Omar Khan, how am I bringing these guys in? Now, Troy Fautanu also was supposed to be a big-time leader in college at Washington. He was supposed to be a guy that did set the tone. And that's why I think there's a unique opportunity with some of these guys that they've brought in to take on that mantle on the offensive side of the ball. And, I think that part of this is there's now no overshadowing presence that sets a not good example of what it means to be a leader. Like, for example, George Pickens. When George Pickens wasn't on the field at the end of the season and we saw him get hurt in like that stretch in November, December, it was clear the offense was missing its biggest weapon. And with that, George Pickens then just snatched by default, got more leverage as far as, hey, you see what you guys are like when I'm not there. So clearly no one should be telling me what to do. And so I think there was a conflict there, and that created like a bit of a clash. But when it's when it's someone that when someone is is that good, that is the best, the tone setter, the best player on a side of the ball, and everyone adheres to them, and they believe into the team, they buy into the team, they do all the little things right. That allows for all the guys that are role players, all the guys that are good, but just not on that level, to fall into place. It helps them focus and say, hey, I have this example to work by. And then that's what creates a better culture within a sports organization. And that's what I think the Steelers need. I think, again, it does. Like you said, the writing was on the wall. At first, we thought when they traded for I thought when they traded for DK Metcalf, I was like, okay, that could be George Pickens getting traded away. Though it didn't happen, and especially didn't happen to the draft. I'm like, all right, well, clearly they're keeping him. Clearly they weren't. And I think part of it's because I think they're expecting DK Metcalf to be that style of a leader we're talking about, where clearly this guy is one of the best in the NFL at what he does. And he's also a guy that's going to buy in and do what's required as a leader.
And I think, too, if you're looking towards the future here, because Aaron Rodgers or whoever is under center this year is not going to be your franchise quarterback of the future. You need this core. You need this offensive nucleus with different leadership styles in place for when, whether it's 2026 or 2027, this organization drafts who they hope to be their quarterback and their franchise guy of the future, to have him come into a place where, hey, look, there's all this leadership around you. You're already in a really good spot to be able to have success and to come in and say, hey, look, there's going to be a lot of responsibility put on you, but there's a lot of people around you here to help you lessen the burden of, oh my gosh, I'm this person and everything's on my shoulders. It's no, there's going to be a bunch of things taken off. So a bunch of weights taken off, I should say, in that way, to be able to, have them come into as easy, or I don't entirely want to say easy, but how simplistic of a situation that they can, where, hey, look, you're the franchise quarterback of the future, but don't worry, there's a big support system around you here.
Yeah, I think that's the thing here is developing that support system. And listen, I think I think the advantage the Steelers have is they have leadership on the team already. They have young guys who understand that they need to be better and that there is a tone for that. The challenge will be on the offensive side of the ball, getting this established this year, finding that identity, not needing to have to look around and ask for too long. Like, I think that's the other importance of when people say, oh, they should just tank. When you tank, leadership does not form. People don't believe in anything. People break, and that's when you really want to set a franchise back. Then do that. And like sometimes you can avoid it. Sometimes you can just go down and come right back up. But it's very rare. Most teams that tank do not just bounce back right away. And so that's why I think it's been important for the Steelers to stay competitive so that they can keep forms of leadership within the organization and have things to pass down. That's why I think the defense has not fallen off that far in Tomlin's time, because even when they were dipping in their talent, there were people there to say, hey, this is what the standard is. And then eventually the talent returned and the culture was there. And that's why they've been a top 5, top 10 defense in several of the past years. But on offense, they need that to be there. And I think that's why it's important for this season, even if they're not a Super Bowl contender, even if they don't win the division, be competitive, be a team in the playoffs, get throughout the year, have important wins that show that prove to everyone, hey, when we buy in, when we believe in each other, we can beat these teams in the NFL. That to me is such a huge part of what the Steelers have to accomplish this year.
It absolutely is. And I think too, with this move, with trading George Pickens to the Cowboys, you're seeing kind of the culture that the Omar Khan, Andy Weidel front office era wants to have. You want to have these quality, culture-driven guys that have leadership, tangible leadership qualities and aspects to them. I mean, just looking, at this year's draft class, so much positivity has been said about Derrick Harmon. You have Jack Sawyer, who's the captain of Ohio State. A lot of these types of players that are going to be the building blocks. You mentioned even going back to last year, the leader Fautanu was with Washington. Like, there are these certain qualities and characteristics we are seeing kind of the Steelers front office make a priority to say, hey, we want guys that are incredibly talented on the field, but also have these leadership qualities, have these tangible. I think when Mike Tomlin and Omar talk about that Steelers DNA, I think this is a big part of it. We're seeing that more and more. And yes, you're going to have different types of personalities and different types of emotions throughout the season, no doubt about that. But the way in which they are bringing in guys who have these leadership, these tangible, apparent leadership qualities, I think speaks volumes to what direction they want this team to take, not just this year, next year, but 5-10 years down the road.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of those guys that can take their first steps in leadership in rookie camp, because that opens today. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I'll remind you the show is also brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job out in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, and you'll double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Jenna Harner, Channel 11 WPXI. Jenna, let's talk about rookie camp. One of the things that I think rookie camp is a minimal thing. It's not a huge news breaking event. It's not, we're not going to see these guys run 40-yard dashes. No one's putting on the pads. This is a chance for everyone to kind of just talk about, like, hey, just to get a sense of, like, hey, let's feel things out. But some of the things that often we try to look for as reporters, what are the early onset tones of guys? And of course, we look to the top guys like Derrick Harmon and Kaleb Johnson. And to me, one of the biggest things you want to see is how well do these guys come in? Do they practice right away? Are there any injury concerns? Do they check those boxes? And are they setting the tone in practice? Because whereas that doesn't mean they're going to be all stars, it does mean they're hitting the ground running, and that's what you want to see.
Gauging kind of the temperature of everything and seeing, what they're like, how they're reacting to us, and
Exactly.
What excitement about, like, hey, look, we're talking to them for the first time as a Pittsburgh Steeler, that glimmer in their eyes of, hey, look, we're here for the first time. I think the Steelers putting out some pictures earlier Thursday of guys kind of walking in, and Kaleb Johnson, I feel like his face is just like in awe. It's like he walked into Disney World, just kind of getting that sense of, for these kids, I mean, because they are kids, what it's like for them to get their first taste of life in the NFL, how they're adjusting. I always love, too, who they've kind of had conversations with, what players they're already engaging with on the team to kind of see, hey, who's a mentor for you? Who are you looking to in that way? I think that's kind of a big part of what I'm looking forward to just hearing from them over the next couple of days, too.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing, learning how these guys deal with each other and the temperament of the dynamics and the relationships that get built in these early stages. And also who are the younger guys, or not the younger guys because they're all young, but who are the guys that were drafted lower in the draft or undrafted that stand out to you? Sebastian Castro, one of the big names that I think of the undrafted free agents, the safety out of Iowa, a guy that I projected as a 4th round pick they got for free as an undrafted free agent. I want to look at him. I want to look at Yayhya Black, a guy they got in the 5th round. How quickly does he look like he's adapting? That's also another part of this, is that we're all going to be looking at the top guys, but which one of those smaller guys, like Beanie Bishop, when he came in as a rookie and everyone was like, hey, that guy looks kind of interesting. I want to see how he does. Those are the things that I think we're going to be looking for in this early stages during rookie camp to see how do these guys stand out. Because again, it's still just football in shorts. We're not looking at the hardcore football. It's going to be about how serious these guys are taking it and can they set the right tone going into the organization.
No, absolutely. And two, kind of who might potentially be those, like you mentioned, I go back to Jaylen Warren kind of be the darling of training camp a couple of years ago. Like who is going to be that next guy that, uncovered gem, I guess, in a way where you're like, wait a second, what they got this guy at this price type thing. I think there's going to be a lot of potential here for some of the guys. And also too, just, who's kind of, little observation things here and there, but like who's buddying up with who. I think go back to last year, it was Zach Frazier, it was Mason McCormick, and I'm forgetting, was it Logan Lee or it was one of the other linemen?
Yeah, I think it was Logan Lee. Yeah.
I think it was Logan Lee, but like the three of them, like we're traveling to and from practice together. Like those little nuggets, those little fun gems of information are always kind of fun to hear from these guys too. And just kind of the relationships that are already starting to build with their new teammates. Because again, as a rookie class, you kind of want to be defined as, look, hey, yes, we're these guys, but there's so much potential to us. And I think it's just interesting to see the bonds that are formed quickly, how quickly they're formed, and kind of, again, who's becoming friends with who. I know it feels very reality TV show in that way to say it, but
it's reality. Like
it is.
That's a very real thing. You think back to Troy Polamalu in his young days when when people were getting used to him, it was kind of we got the early glimpses of like, wait a minute, this guy is like he looked like in the draft and USC that he was like, believing all this stuff, but maybe that's a fraud. No, that's really who he is. That's and I think that's the thing that we're going to get a sense from these guys. Like, for example, I was so impressed by Derrick Harmon at the combine when I got a chance to speak to him. He was so well formed. He had well thought out answers. He could layer the answers, and like I never felt like he was giving me a BS answer, which maybe he was sometimes. But again, it's how you dress it up, and can you form the presentation to the media and to reporters that, hey, I mean what I say, and this has value. Because if you can do that to us, you can that's the stuff that leaders can do, because then that shows you could take weight on your shoulders, deal with a situation, and make sure that you remain professional, and that you're setting that kind of a tone. Those are the things also that I look for, is who carries themselves well around us, because oftentimes that can inform you who's going to carry themselves well around the locker room.
Yeah, again, circling back to the leadership conversation we've been having here, who potentially might emerge as kind of the next step of the leaders on this team. What are we seeing from them? Again, how they're carrying themselves and just the way in which they're engaging with us. It always is so interesting to hear rookie answers for the first time, because no doubt, talking with a swarm of reporters can be incredibly intimidating, but these guys have been around it for a while, no doubt, but just kind of seeing how they react to that, what they get, what their demeanor and their personalities are like. It's fun to just kind of learn the little bit of information we're going to start to learn about a lot of these guys and these future Steelers that a lot of them envision being here for years to come.
Absolutely. Jenna, it's always great to have you here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
It is always a joy to be here. Thank you for having me as always. You can find me on Twitter at Jenna Harner 11, Instagram, Jenna_Harner, and locally or online, WPXI here in Pittsburgh, whether you're watching us locally or on the app. We got a lot of cool things coming your way. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. Stay tuned for that there with everything that Channel 11 does. Stay tuned here for the Locked On Steelers podcast as well. I will be at rookie camp. My name is Christopher Carter. You can always find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. Same handle everywhere is at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, including my live chat, which went up yesterday. So you can check out where I answered a bunch of fan questions there, as well as check out our rookie camp coverage. And also check out an interview I did with DJ Thomas Jones, the undrafted free agent rookie. I know I said that was coming out Wednesday, but then obviously when George Pickens got traded, when he got traded away, that changed that. But that now comes out Friday. We'll also have an article on that on Sunday in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But keep it here with the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'll try to give some updates after rookie camp this weekend, throughout the weekend, so you can get some of that bonus content we talk about. We'll see you here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.